of Jack Emmer, our young head lacrosse coach. Even in college, I had the idea that I wanted to coach the game, and Emmer set a great example. I learned firsthand how to deal with the complexities of the game, establish successful strategies to handle young men on and off the field, and use motivational techniques. I looked to Emmer first, since I was on the field with him day in and day out, but I also had an eye out for the all-time great coaches. Richie Moran and his Cornell teams were the pinnacle of success. Buddy Beardmore at Maryland, along with Bob Scott and Henry Ciccarone at Johns Hopkins, and Richie were the men I looked up to and hoped to emulate. Richie's Cornell teams went on to win 2 more championships in 1976 and 1977, and just missed an amazing three-peat in 1978. The Cornell teams of that era broke up the lacrosse world of the 1960s, centered on Baltimore County, and in doing so showed that the beautiful game of lacrosse was not owned by a handful of prep schools and colleges. By the late 1970s, I was coaching high school lacrosse on Long Island at Great Neck South, not very far from Manhasset High School, where Richie began his career. Could I do the same as Richie had? I constantly asked myself. I knew there was no reason I could not if I tried hard enough. My college coaching career started as head coach at Rochester Institute of Technology in 1982, continued with an assistant spot at Johns Hopkins from 1985 to 1987, and then culminated, beginning in 1988, with my first Division I head coaching job at Princeton. I cannot help but see significance in the fact that my last game at Hopkins, the 1987 National Championship, and one of my first games at Princeton were against Cornell. My target, once I got to Princeton and set an Ivy League crown as a first goal, was clear. I had to get our Princeton program past the great Cornell programs and their great head coach, Richie Moran. Syracuse's winning the NCAA title in 1983 opened people's eyes, and then we at Princeton went on a run of 6 championships between 1992 to 2001. The doors were opened, and some new teams started to believe they could achieve the ultimate goal. In 2009, I was offered the opportunity to help bring this level of lacrosse out west to the University of Denver. We were fortunate in 2015 to be the first team west of the Appalachians to win the NCAA championship. In the decade between 2010 and 2019, Duke, Loyola, Denver, and Yale expanded the ranks of champions. As we look back 50 years, the growth of championship teams may have begun with Richie's 1971 championship. Over the years, there were many great battles between Richie and me, and I'm not sure these 2 Long Island-bred Irishmen were fond of one another as coaches. What I know for certain, however, is that Richie Moran's acumen as a coach and the example of his success at an Ivy League school drove me every day. I am thankful for Coach Moran more than he could ever know. Bill Tierney, Denver, Colorado, March 2021. Prologue. 1978, 2001, 1970. When halftime arrived in the 1978 NCAA semifinal, a little after 6 p.m. on a warm, early summer evening in Ithaca, New York, the lacrosse players from Cornell and Navy headed toward their locker rooms inside Sholkoff Field. They walked with their backs to the small red scoreboard that read Cornell 7, Visitors 3. The Big Red players, in white helmets, white jerseys, and red shorts, slipped past a large soccer goal that had been removed from the field of play. They entered the 2-story gray stone ivy-covered building housing the locker rooms and turned left. Navy, in blue and yellow helmets, mustard yellow jerseys, and blue shorts, entered and turned right. The game drew 10,000 spectators, enough to fill the raised concrete section of stands behind the team benches, popular because the seats were out of the sun, and several rows of the much larger crescent oyster shell stands on the opposite side. In recent years, the fans had come to expect successful Cornell lacrosse teams.